What's up, Internet? My name is Attack Slug, and I want to talk today about why the build to WrestleMania 31 has been kind of terrible. Now, right off the bat, I should say I am a wrestling fan. I think when wrestling is good, it's really good. But when wrestling is bad, it is just the most head-shaking thing on the planet. And usually, even if the rest of the whole year is terrible, when you get to the Rumble and you have the road to WrestleMania, it's usually pretty good. But this year, I don't know what happened. So I'm going to try to go through each match bit by bit from the bottom of the card to the top of the card and see if I can't just craft an overall narrative on why I think that the build has been terrible. I might get a little bit sidetracked, but that's kind of how I tend to do in these videos. So the bottom of the card, and this apparently is not confirmed yet, is going to be a fatal four-way for the tag team titles. And one has to wonder at this point, who still cares about the tag team titles? But it's going to be the Brass Ring Club, which is Cesaro and Tyson, who I love. It's going to be the Usos, who one of them is supposedly hurt. It's going to be New Day, and it's going to be Los Matadors. Now this match is going to be on the pre-show. Did I mention the pre-show is 2 hours long? Why is the pre-show 2 hours long? It's already a 4-hour pay-per-view. At this point, WrestleMania is no longer a money commitment, because we no longer have that 6-month commitment for the network. So WrestleMania, for all intents and purposes, is $9.99. WrestleMania is now a time commitment. When you have a 4-hour pay-per-view and a 2-hour pre-show, that's six hours of your day to wrestling. And as much as I love wrestling, that's too much. And maybe it wouldn't be too much if it was all top-notch, super quality stuff, but as we've seen from the Rumble up until now, the build has just not been any good. So let's start with one of the matches they put the most time into their build, which is Seth Rollins versus Randy Orton. Now this one has seemingly got the most TV time of anything because both those guys are actually around to build it. However, having Randy Orton come back at Fastlane, attack everybody but Seth Rollins, and then the next night rejoin the Authority for a couple weeks to then turn on them, makes no sense. You could have had Randy Orton chasing Seth Rollins all the way up until Mania from Fastlane, but instead you do this convoluted stuff that resets up things you already established before Randy Orton had to leave to film a movie. That doesn't make any sense. The average fan does not have as short of an attention span as you think they have, and personally I was looking forward to him having that chase for those couple of weeks leading into Mania. Instead, we got just these long-winded promos about how he's with the Authority and everything's cool, and then they had all this convoluted backstage stuff to finally set up the match as of like last week or so, and it didn't need that. You could have had that chase from Fastlane to Mania, and you didn't, and I don't understand why. Now make no mistake, the fact that I'm saying the build has been terrible does not mean that I'm saying WrestleMania is going to be terrible, because obviously it hasn't happened yet. Then you've got AJ and Paige versus the Bellas, which seems to be just on this show because they had to have a Divas match on this show. It's not for a belt, it's a tag match. There's no real reason for them to be fighting other than the fact that they don't like each other, and they're bringing back the whole frenemies thing, and it's such a fluff, puff piece match. Past few weeks, it seemed like AJ is just mentally checked out, doesn't care, and that's fine. And I understand that you obviously are going to want to have all of your top divas on the show, but think of it this way. Had they gone with AJ versus Stephanie McMahon, imagine the amount of heat you could have drawn for that match for both those characters when you had AJ legitimately airing her grievances on social media, whether or not that was real or fake. Had you booked AJ versus Stephanie, that could have been a money match. Now you might ask yourself, well then what do you do with the Bellas and Paige? They all deserve to be on the show. You've got 6 hours. You're telling me you can't find room for 2 Divas matches in 6 hours of programming? Put it on the pre-show. I don't care. Do something. Then there's the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, which is one of your 2 matches where you're kind of shoving all your mid-card guys to get them all their WrestleMania paydays, and that's fine. I really enjoyed when they had previously established the Money in the Bank for that concept, and I am all for the guys getting as much WrestleMania paydays as they can get, but this is at the expense of other matches that we should have had a payoff for at WrestleMania. Primarily, Goldust and Stardust are not getting their blow-off match, their final part of their storyline, and The Miz and Damien Sandow. Now, the unfortunate reality of the Goldust Stardust situation was the match they had at Fastlane, while they were telling a great story, the crowd at Fastlane was terrible. That Memphis crowd all night, terrible. So that kind of killed any momentum that storyline had. I thought Cody Rhodes cut the best promo of his career after that match at Fastlane, and it is a damn shame that we cannot have the brother versus brother blow-off match at WrestleMania that we should have, and instead, Stardust is in one match, Goldust is in another match. Now you do have The Miz and Sandow, who should have had their own singles match to finally remove Sandow from The Miz, or at least have another match at Extreme Rules, whatever. They're not going to have that hot singles match at WrestleMania, and that's a damn shame. I think Sandow is doing some of the best stuff of his career. I think he has been good at giving whatever you... If you give solid crap to Damian Sandow, he's going to make it good. He is that talented. So having them both in the Battle Royal is kind of a crapshoot, and they're kind of the only reasons to watch it. But here's the problem with either the Battle Royal or the Intercontinental title match, and that's the impending return of Sheamus. In either of those matches, and most likely it will be in the Battle Royal, we get the return of Sheamus, and you're not going to have Sheamus return and not have him win. So it's kind of hard to become invested in the ridiculous build for any of those matches when you know, hey, there's going to be the big white pasty Sheamus, and he's going to come in and win, and yeah, kind of whatever, who cares. But speaking of multi-man clusterfucks, there is the Intercontinental ladder match for the IC title, and I don't know why anyone would want to be in this match. The IC title is like the monkey's paw. It is cursed. When you are the IC champion, anytime you are in a non-title match, you lose. So why would anyone ever want to be the IC champion? It makes no sense to me. And yes, this match has been getting a build, which everyone just kind of steals the title, and it's been these weird shenanigans, and I don't know why they're having to lower Daniel Bryan to this level to say, hey, we're gonna get him on the card, we're gonna have him in this, 7-man clusterfuck. And make no mistake, the match might be great, but I'm focusing here on the build. What about that build, the past few weeks of build for this match, makes you want to actually say, hey, I'm going to pay the $9.99 to order WrestleMania and sit there for 6 hours and be entertained by it? Nothing about this build, with R-Truth sneaking around and guys stealing the belt, has made me even care about wanting to watch the match, outside of the fact that I know all the guys in that match are extraordinarily talented and they're going to put on a good show. But nothing in the build will tell you that, because it's just this nonsense. Now, the rumors say they want to have Daniel Bryan as the IC champion and John Cena as the US champion to elevate your secondary titles, because the main title is not on the show that much, but I'll discuss more of that stuff when I get to the main event. So speaking of John Cena, we have John Cena versus Rusev, and honestly, this is probably the best built match outside of Randy Orton and Rollins on the card, because both guys, again, are on TV every week to build it. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the end of how they had that match at Fastlane. I don't think the kick to the balls was necessary for the story in that match. You could have just had John Cena pass out to the Accolade, and then at WrestleMania, you're like, oh god, is it going to happen again? Can John Cena overcome the odds once again for your hard-earned money? Because obviously he will, because he's John Cena, and it's WrestleMania. But having the interference from Lana and the kick to the balls kind of says, well, obviously if Lana's not going to be there at Mania, and that's a whole different issue, where why would you let one of the people in your top tier feud with John Cena go film a movie in the middle of WrestleMania season, your most important 2 months of the year? Who okayed that? And the bottom line there is that John Cena probably wins the match, and that's really, in the grand scheme of things, when you want to build new stars, is not helping you build new stars. Now sure, they can have Rusev get back his victory at Extreme Rules, but the fact of the matter is this: a hell of a lot more people are going to watch WrestleMania than they're going to watch Extreme Rules. It was the same thing last year with Bray Wyatt. You had Bray Wyatt losing at Mania, and then he won at Extreme Rules. But what do you remember? You remember him losing at WrestleMania. In any case, this has been one of the matches that actually I'm looking forward to, because the build has made me interested in looking forward to it, notwithstanding that guy with the terrible accent, the attorney on Raw last week, which was just, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? You have Nikolai Volkov on a Legends deal Where's Nikolai? And then we begin to get to the crux of the problem with the build to WrestleMania 31, and that is your top 3 matches on the show have only had half the participants actually participating in the build to Mania, the first of which being Bray Wyatt versus The Undertaker. Now, I've had people say to me, well, in past years, a bunch of part-time guys have been in Mania and not been around. But look, when The Rock had to do his stuff between the Rumble and Mania, he showed up a lot more often than Undertaker showing up. He hasn't been on TV at all. A lot more often than Sting's been showing up. A lot more often than Brock Lesnar's been showing up. You could say last year, oh, well, Triple H is a part-time guy. You can't call Triple H a part-time guy. He's on TV every goddamn week. But I digress. The build of this match has been 100% Bray Wyatt, cutting the same tired Bray Wyatt promos each and every week. They set his chair on fire, and that's kind of been it. Now, when it comes down to the match itself, I don't know how much gas Taker has left in the tank, but one would think that you're bringing him back to put over Bray Wyatt, because Bray Wyatt is your next creepy guy for the next 20 years or so. And if you wanted to do it right, if you wanted to go full crazy wrestling with it, you would have some kind of a transference of power between the urn and the lantern. And if that happens, I called it. But one of my other issues was the fact that the Rumble match itself, that hour-long Rumble, is how you set up a lot of feuds going into Mania. And it felt like this year, they set up Bray Wyatt, he said, nobody can beat me, blah, 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 and that set up the challenge to Undertaker. But other than that, what else happened in the Rumble? Obviously, besides Roman winning it, what else happened that would set up other things that are going to happen at Mania? Outside of Axel. Now, what they did very briefly with Curtis Axel and Axelmania, before they went full Hogan with it, very briefly what they did, where the fans were getting behind him, was fantastic. But now he's getting the Charlie Haas treatment, and that's unfortunate. But then we go to one of the matches that I have the biggest issue with, and that is Triple H and Sting. Now you might say, like I just said, Triple H is a part-time guy, but he's on TV every week. Sting has appeared 4 times since Survivor Series. If you want to count Survivor Series as part of the upcoming Mania build, sure. But technically, the Mania build is the road to WrestleMania, which is the Rumble up until Mania. And it's not just the limited amount of appearances that Sting has made between the Rumble and Mania. It's the fact that the narrative for that match makes no goddamn sense. So you would think Sting is supposed to be the face in that match, and Triple H should be the heel. But Triple H is defending the honor of WWE and vanquishing the last remnants of WCW, who we've been trained in the past, I don't know how many years since they folded, to hate WCW. So how does that make Sting the face when Sting represents WCW, who the fans have been trained to hate, who WWF won over in this big war back in the day? Not only that, you're doing stuff like having that ridiculous voiceover that actually was Dolph Ziggler, ridiculous voiceover saying Sting failed WCW. The only one who failed WCW was the executive who decided that after Bischoff wanted to get funding to save WCW, decided to not give them a TV spot on TBS. That is the only reason that WCW actually is no longer around. Go watch those Monday Night Wars documentaries. If it wasn't for the fact that Time Warner and AOL merged and you had a board of directors and not just Ted Turner at the top, WCW would still be around today. So to craft this narrative that Sting's been vanished for 14 years, we're going to ignore his decade in TNA, because of course we are, but to craft that narrative as part of that build and make Triple H the bad guy, even though he's representing the company that we're cheering for, makes no sense. I'm all for Sting having his Legends contract, having his Mania moment, having his merchandise, all that good stuff. I'm happy to see Sting around, but that match I could not care less about. And finally, speaking of matches I could not care less about, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. How do you continue to build your top match of the show when Brock Lesnar shows up and bounces around when he wants to, gets paid 6 figures to let Paul Heyman talk for him? Granted, Paul Heyman is the best guy on the mic in the business today. But when you are building a main event feud, and one of the guys is just not there each and every Monday night on Raw, and that one guy is your champion, what the hell are you doing? The one thing that I do like about this match is not going to be the match itself, it is going to be the result. Because the subtext is we don't really know if Brock is going to re-sign or if he's going to leave. One would imagine if he re-signs, he's going to win. Now, does that mean that he sticks around on his limited schedule until who knows when? And does that mean that the Money in the Bank briefcase continues to be useless? Is more interesting than the match itself. Personally, I'm all for Brock sticking around. I just don't think he should be holding on to the championship, which is not to say I want to see Roman Reigns win the championship, because I think Roman Reigns is still green as goose shit. Now, don't get me wrong. There are ways you can make that match good. There are ways you can make that feud good. But the build between the Rumble, which they got super lucky that they didn't have that Raw got snowed out the day after the Rumble, because the fans in Philly shit all over that victory at the Rumble for Roman Reigns. But there has really been an easy solution for both those guys to have that build be effective and to have it work. Have them stop talking and have them start kicking ass. Roman Reigns is a simple guy to get over. Just have him stop talking. Have Vince stop crafting his promos. He cannot talk to save his life. And definitely don't have him talking back and forth with Paul Heyman, who's just going to embarrass him. And the other part of that build that is so ridiculous is having so many top guys verbally put over Roman Reigns, make him look strong, make him the big dog in the yard, and it's not working. It's not believable. When Daniel Bryan says Roman Reigns is a better wrestler than him, who the hell believes that? We watch the show every week. Who's going to believe that? When Paul Heyman says Roman is better than all these past legends, it almost sounds like Paul is being sarcastic and mocking him. It is that unbelievable. And that's kind of where I'm at on this whole show, is unbelievable. The build from the Rumble to Mania, there's usually something I can latch onto. There's usually some kind of a match I'm going to care about. And in this case, I'm kind of just like, yeah, it's going to happen. And yeah, I'm going to watch it. And it might be good, it might be bad, might be indifferent. But at the end of the day, I'm just kind of like, it doesn't feel like a build to WrestleMania. It doesn't feel epic. It doesn't feel significant. It feels like they've been spinning their wheels since, like, Survivor Series. And if you are still sitting here watching this, watching me ramble about why the build is terrible, I really appreciate it. I'm gonna end it here. Let me know what you think of this year's build to Mania. Is it good? Is it bad? Does it make you want to watch 6 hours of wrestling next Sunday night? Because I'm gonna be watching it, but whether or not I think it's gonna be good, well, I'll let you know. So until then, and until next time, I am Attack Slug, and I will see you next time, right here on this channel. And I'm out.